What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the official Loft Sports podcast. I'm your host, Brian Finnegan, joined by my guy, Tom Schultz, for a special Tuesday night edition of the podcast. Tom, how you doing?
Well, I was doing better before I had to watch a dreadful Liverpool performance. So everything was good until about 30 minutes ago when it was just all downhill. But that's sports, right?
That's usually the regular. I always, it's funny as I always talk about this too with some friends. It's like, basically your sports teams will disappoint you probably like 90 to 95% of the time during your life. There's always that, little glimmer of hope, maybe the 5% chance that maybe one of them can win a championship. And for a person though in my position, I've actually yet to see that happen, which is crazy. Right, I can't even claim. So I refuse to claim the Rangers in '94 because I wasn't really into hockey at the time. I absolutely refuse to claim that. So I haven't seen the Jets. Obviously, I haven't seen the Mets. The Knicks had their moments in the '90s where they were really good. Maybe they can make a run this year, but I haven't seen it. And of course, the Rangers have let me down. Though Notre Dame the past couple of years has been really good, and I am really high on the Irish going into next year, but I'm not going to get into that too. You got me down the rabbit hole right now of all this stuff that
Yeah, I mean,
depressed me in my life. So, so, but yeah, so, right, we'll get back on track here. So, right, folks, we got a ton to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about some fallout, from the NFL Combine. The franchise tag deadline has just passed. There's already some news regarding trades and releases that we'll get into, and rumors are running amok right now. So we'll touch on the ones we feel are most relevant right now to some high profile players. So before I get into it, I want to just do a quick PSA. So going forward, the podcast itself is mainly going to focus on football, mainly NFL. We'll touch on some college football too, but we're planning on releasing at least 2 shows a week going forward. The standard is going to be on Tuesdays and Fridays. We will touch upon the other sports on occasion on the podcast through bonus episodes. So, right, for instance, March Madness is coming up soon. We will have some bonus episodes based around March Madness and the bracket. And then, of course, once we get into NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, those come around, we'll talk about those as well. Now, just because we don't talk about the other sports specifically on the podcast, that doesn't mean we're going to do away with the coverage. Our website will continue to focus on, baseball, basketball, hockey, etc. I even this past weekend, I touched upon pro wrestling as I witnessed probably one of the worst wrestling debuts I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah, we've got it all covered for you. Check out our website, lovesportus.com, for all the articles. Tom keeps churning out the draft reports. I keep cranking out baseball previews. But as far as how the Loft Sports format's going to go for the podcast, we're going to stick with football. So with that being said, let's get into it, Tom. So NFL Combine's come and gone, and I want to spend some time in the show talking about the news and rumors going on as we approach free agency. There's a lot of stuff going on around the Combine that was being reported, but I think first we need to touch upon the actual Combine itself. So I wanted to ask you, from any of the Combine that you had watched, was there anything that really stood out to you, whether it being maybe a player or two, or maybe a positional group, or so what or who stood out to you the most at the Combine, and were there any players you think whose stock rose the most coming out of it?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I always like to preface with the combine is, like, for someone like me, the combine is not the be all end all, right? Like, I think some people love the combine and it's fun to watch and it's fun to see these guys who are going to be drafted and play in the league just do stuff at an athletic level that, like, you look at them and you're like, they shouldn't be able to move like that. Some of these guys, and they do. But for me, when I watch a combine, a lot of it is just kind of either reaffirm or answer questions I have. So I try not to fall too in love with guys based off of what they do in the combine, but like a guy like Dylan Theneman from Oregon, like when you watch him on film a little bit, and I thought he had a good combine. When you watch him on film a little bit, he doesn't always look like the quickest player. Like, there are times he plays single high safety and he's got to get east to west instead of north south, and he doesn't look that quick. Well, he's a guy who goes out, runs a sub 4.40, and you're like, all right, well, if I want to play him in single high, which I don't even know if that's something teams will want to have him do consistently, he at least has the speed to do it and can cover cover ground like that. So I thought he did well. I thought his teammate from Oregon, Kenyon Sadiq, did really well. Of course, Sonny Styles is just an absolute freak of nature
Man.
with what he did. I think the wide receiver group did themselves well. I mean, it's a deep wide receiver class to begin with, I think. So I think most of those guys did well. But yeah, when it comes to the combine, it's more of when I'm watching guys on film, hey, all right, is this guy a little bit faster than he looks on film? Let me go look at his 40 time. Is this guy as agile as he looks? Okay, let me look at that. Yeah, that's how I take the combine.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, look, there's a reason they call it, right, the underwear Olympics for a reason, right? But I've always looked at it as a combine as a good way that you can measure up certain guys like next to other guys in terms of athleticism, right? That's kind of how I've always kind of looked at the combine, right? You mentioned a guy like Sonny Styles, right? So he came in at 6'5", 244 pounds, and he was actually the first player in over 20 years to run a sub 4.5 40-yard dash while also recording a 40 plus inch vertical and an 11 plus foot broad 11 plus foot broad jump at that 244-pound weight. So yeah, Sonny Styles definitely a guy who I think really helped his cause as far as from the, an athleticism standpoint. And then, looking at the way he looks right now, I mean, I honestly at this point, do you feel he's like a top 5 pick locked in? I mean, I really can't see him getting past Washington right now at number 7. I think that might be his floor right now.
So again, when I watch guys and I do my board, which I have, and I'll send to Finn and he'll get up on the website at some point. I'm watching these guys and looking at them basically strictly as football players, right?
Mm.
Like I want to see how they play football. And Sonny Styles, I think, is literally as good as any player in this draft.
Mm.
He's 2 on my big board right now. So like when we're talking about him, there's always been parts of me, and I've spoken about this with you off the pod, like would the Jets take him at 2? I know it sounds ridiculous, and we've talked about need versus value and positional value and this and that, but like if we're talking strictly football players, guys who can come in from day one and impact your football team, Sonny Styles is as good as anybody in this class. So yeah, I could see him going 5 to the Giants. Like it really is going to come down to where teams value, do they value the position more or the football player more? And I think in Styles' case, the combine numbers are only going to help him in that case. Yeah, I think if he gets out of the top 10, I'll be shocked at this point. I really think there's a part of me that looks at the Giants and go, can you really pass this guy up at 5? He'll make your defense better right away.
Yeah, I tell you, the Giants at 5, I feel like in this draft, they are one of those teams sitting like in that, what's it called? Like the catbird seat, so to speak. I mean, 5, you could have a Sonny Styles fall to you. You could have a Caleb Downs fall to you. Jeremiah Love, I don't know if they would go that high for a running back, but there's rumors they're sniffing around the free agency market for running backs. But yeah, definitely a good spot to be in. Once because right, a team like the Jets at 2 has to make a decision on which, who is the top talent that you got to take at number 2 here. So if they end up taking like an Arvell Reese, it pushes guys like Sonny Styles, Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs down, even if they can get past the Titans at number 4, who I think are probably going to be looking at defense too. So, but let's talk about another guy who really, I wouldn't say really helped this combine. I mean, he's regarded as one of the best players in the draft itself, Jeremiah Love. So Jeremiah Love ran a 4.36 40. He basically solidified his status as the top running back in this class. Look, I mentioned on our mock draft episode just how special I think he is. Best skill position player I've ever seen come out of Notre Dame since Michael Floyd in 2012. And I would not be surprised by the end of his second season if we're not already talking about him as one of the top running backs in the league. The running back class overall, though, looked pretty good. From what I saw. I didn't watch a lot of the combine, but running backs was one of the position groups I watched. Mike Washington from Arkansas, he posted the fastest 40 time for a running back in his class with a 4.33. This is coming in weighing at 223 pounds. So looking at his body of work, we're talking about, potentially like elite speed to size ratio. And, this is a guy who I think Tom might have gone from potential, maybe a day 3 pick to maybe a day 2 pick. So, right. I mean, I see this running back class basically, right. And again, like you've scouted this a lot more than me. This is just from what I've heard and what I've read. I mean, I look at this running back class, right? But behind Jeremiah Love, it's pretty open for the rest of the running backs in terms of who's number two. I mean, but no, another Notre Dame guy, Jadarian Price, who I absolutely love from Notre Dame, but Mike Washington blew a lot of people away, and he has a really interesting story, right? Originally recruited to University of Buffalo, was there for 3 seasons, transferred to New Mexico State, and then last season ends up at Arkansas, and really a really bad Arkansas team last season too. So, this wasn't a guy getting a lot of carries late in games with how bad Arkansas was, but really, really impressive. And they even showed him on the sideline just how emotional he was getting, just the journey that he took to basically end up, with getting the position that earned himself, the best 40 time in the draft. That's, really going to, I think, bump up his salary when, when he gets drafted in April.
Yeah, I think he's put himself in conversation for RB2. I think for the
Mhm.
longest time, people thought it was Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, both Notre Dame guys. And I think that's still probably the case. But when you watch Mike Washington, I've watched a little bit of him. He really shined in the I'm almost positive when I was watching A&M the other day, he really shined in that game. He played really, really well. So he did himself well. He's a guy who, to your point, he's a big running back. And now you look at how fast he runs. That's going to be something that, teams go, okay, he not only can he be the physical running back, but he's got home run speed. And that shows up on film, but you might not have known it was legitimate sub 4.33 speed. So he did himself really well this weekend.
Another guy who I think did really well. Let's stick with Arkansas, Taylon Green, their quarterback. So he had a 43.5-inch vertical, which was one of the best marks for a quarterback in over 20 years. He also ran a 4.36 40-yard dash. So, here's a guy based off, great numbers here, right? Likely a day 3 pick, maybe an early day 3 at this point. I saw some reports maybe signaling that he could go maybe like he was probably like a late round guy, maybe like the 5th, 6th, or 7th round. Maybe at this point, maybe he bumps up to round 4. Right, a guy who spent 3 years at Boise State and another transfer into Arkansas in 2024, where he developed into a consistent starter there. But in terms of NFL evaluators, from what I've read, he's definitely come across as like a real project at quarterback. I mean, before I really even knew about him, I'm doing mock drafts for the Jets, and I see him as a guy in like the 5th round. I'm like, oh, great. Let me grab this guy, stash him. He could be, he's fast. I could probably maybe use him as like a third quarterback that could develop over time. But yeah, a guy like him, I feel like really improved his draft stock over this weekend.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. At Arkansas, it was really up and down. He's definitely one where it's like the numbers look great. Now you have to pop the film on and you have to kind of really break down what you think of him as a quarterback. He's definitely a developmental prospect. If we're talking day 3, maybe he gets himself into the back end of day 2. You're going to draft him off those traits. That's fine. But he played well against Tennessee. He played well against A&M. But there were also some games like Auburn and I think LSU. He really struggled in those games. So he did himself some favors with the way he tested. Now it's going to be a matter of, well, let's watch him on film. And then you watch him on film and say, is there enough there that we think we can develop him? Like the Jets are an interesting team that you throw out there, and you're day 3. Can you stash him? And then you're watching him, and can he learn and develop in 2 to 3 years to earn himself an opportunity? That'll be the interesting question on him. But he definitely helped himself with what he did at the combine.
Mm-hmm. And another guy I want to just point out here real quick. So Danny Dennis Sutton, right? Defensive end from Penn State. So, according to all the metrics, he finished with a near perfect relative athletic score. So an RAS score, which is 9.96. That's out of a perfect 10. So he ran a 4.63 and his 10-yard split was 1.63 seconds. So those times are actually, I looked this up. So those times are faster than, times of some specific NFL quarterbacks. I
That's
saw
crazy.
guys like Patrick Mahomes, and he's a guy who can, he really looks like he can be an explosive guy off the line of scrimmage. So, from what I had read, he was looked at as maybe like a late day 2 or early day 3 pick. Maybe this is a guy who can go into like the middle of round 2 at this point, or maybe mid to high round 3. So, I mean, we've got a lot of scouting reports, Tom. Is this guy, Danny Dennis Sutton, you haven't looked at him yet. Is this guy on your radar after what he was able to accomplish this weekend?
I haven't looked at him yet, at least like detailed, right? Like you hear about a guy like this, and even at Penn State, like he's had a pretty good career at Penn State, right? He played all 4 years at Penn State, got the majority of like his play time his junior and senior year. He had 8.5 sacks both his junior and his senior year, so he was productive. Had some forced fumbles. Like, he's a guy who now you look at how he tested and you go back on film and you got to watch him and then ask yourself, okay, like, are the traits there on film? If they are, can they be coached up? But he's a guy who's definitely on the radar. There are some positions that you're going to draft guys based off of traits, right? More so versus film. I don't always necessarily love that, but their defensive end is definitely a position where if you have a guy who's super explosive, tests really well, well, that's going to help that guy's stock more than an offensive lineman who might test well, right? So he's a guy who's definitely tested well and been pretty productive at Penn State. He was a highly recruited guy. He was a top 50 recruit when he went to Penn State. So there's a little bit of pedigree there as well. He'll definitely be a guy I look at now and look at a little deeper and see if he can find himself probably as like a day 2 prospect. And then from there, if you like the traits you see in a guy like this, okay, then it comes down to coaching him up, right? Then it comes down to your defensive coordinator, your defensive line coach, developing him. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about guys with traits, you can't teach that, right? Like, this is a guy who graded out as high as anybody who has for his position group, and you just can't teach that. A lot of coaches will say, I can teach the football side of it. I can't teach this athleticism. So again, another guy that did himself well.
Yeah, definitely. Those were some of the guys who really, really looked really good over the combine. Now let's talk about the back end a little bit. I shouldn't say whose stock took a hit based on the performance, but maybe in some player personnel or general managers, front office guys' eyes, maybe it did. So on the back end, who took a hit from their performance and why was it Carnell Tate?
It's funny because, like, what he did at the combine, it doesn't, like, to me, it doesn't impact me at all.
Mhm.
Like, this is still wide receiver 1. When you turn the film on this guy, he gets open. So yeah, he didn't run very well, but like, Puka didn't run well either. I don't care how high he jumped. I watch him go up against corners. This is the type of stuff that, like, when we talk about the guys we're going to talk about, and 2 of them on the top of your list, absolutely you can knock them. But when you turn on the film, Tate, way more than Fanu, who I know you're going to talk about in a minute, nothing bothers me. And I'm sitting there, if I'm a team in the back end of the top 10 and Carnell Tate's going to drop, awesome. I will take Carnell Tate, the football player, versus Carnell Tate, the combine athlete, any day of the week.
Yeah, I think they made a joke on the broadcast. I think like Brandon Beane from Buffalo general manager was basically like, yeah, I hope he falls now because I think he should definitely fall. So or I think Rich Eisen and I think, I forget who, I think it was DJ were on there. They were joking around with it. But yeah, so overall, so if you're not familiar, so Carnell Tate ran a 4.53 at the combine and his 10-yard split was a 1.61, which is still, I mean, look, 4.53 is not slow for a 6'2" receiver, but right, it wasn't the burner speed that like, right, most scouts and personnel guys may have expected. But so here's the question, Tom. Do you think he's a number 1 receiver for an NFL team? Is that
Yes.
what you can project him as?
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing that I watch on film that concerns me with what he is as a player. Like, yeah, are we not going to be running verticals for him one-on-one potentially because he can't beat the guy quickly? Maybe. But like, I think that stuff's ridiculous. This guy's ability to get open is elite. His ability to high point a ball is elite. He goes up and makes contested catches. So sure, if you have that concern, maybe it wouldn't concern me at all. Like if I was a team looking for a number 1 wide receiver, he's the guy I would target first.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then let's get into another guy you just mentioned. So Spencer Fano, offensive tackle from Utah. So look, I'm not going to say it's real slight against. I mean, his arms measured in shorter than what the average threshold is that most NFL teams require, right? So the average arm length is apparently 33 inches. He measured in at 32 and an eighth inch, which is kind of, when I say what this threshold that NFL teams look for, I'm talking about in terms of like a starting offensive tackle in the league. So maybe this could get teams to possibly look at him as more of a move to a guard at the next level, which could potentially lower his draft value. I mean, also I was looking at him on the field, and again, like, maybe I'm guilty of this. You let me know. Sometimes I like to see how some of the guys who are toply rated by some of these, draft analysts measure up to some of the other guys on the field. And in terms of athleticism, I wouldn't say he really blew me away or anything like that. He kind of just looked like, another guy out there compared to some other linemen. Of course, I mean, these are, 300-pound linemen most days. Maybe they should just look like about the same out there on the field. But I wasn't really blown away by his field drills, maybe I'm guilty of that. Like I was for some of these other guys, like who's the kid from Iowa, the guard, who everybody was going nuts about with the mullet, the guy Dunker, I think
Yeah,
he
yeah,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but,
What for me with Fanu, it's like, yeah, guard may be the move, but there is still a world where he's a really, really good tackle. So
mhm,
I don't think his stock will take a hit, especially because the top tackle, the top guard, the kid from Penn State is good, but he's gonna be a guard. And I have my concerns about him. I have my concerns about Fanu too. I don't think he's, a slam dunk gonna come in day one and be an all pro right tackle. I think he has his faults, and I think he struggled against speed guys. I think he can be slow out of his out off the snap at times. And yeah, not having those long arms could be concerning. But I still think when you look at him and Maui Goa, the two from Miami, and I think they're maybe not very similar, but they're in the same kind of bracket and category of where I am. Maui Goa is going to translate to a tackle. Fanu might be able to do both. I still think if you like Fanu as a tackle, you're going to draft him as a tackle, and at worst, I think he could be a good guard.
mhm.
I think his floor is at a minimum being a starting NFL guard. So you're going to get a guy that's going to be a contributor in the NFL. But yeah, the concerns are there for them, and I totally get it if teams are scared a little bit by what they saw at the combine.
A couple other guys I'll touch on real quick who, according to what I would read, had some down combines. One of them being Emmett Johnson, the running back from Nebraska. So he ran a 4.56 40, only weighs 202 pounds. So this was considered underwhelming, and he didn't look too smooth in the field drills either. Malachi Fields, another guy, wide receiver from Notre Dame. So he ran a 4.61 40, which I think was actually the quote unquote slowest of the receiving class. Again, I mean, I kind of I mentioned him in the past. I mean, again, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I didn't think he was really anything special at Notre Dame when he transferred there over from Virginia. I just think he's a guy who, won't really have like a great career in the NFL, but could be like a solid possession receiver that can, fit on some teams, maybe like a third or fourth guy, one of those roles. And then another guy who I read about, Caden McDonald, defensive tackle, Ohio State. So he didn't run the 40, and his position drills apparently didn't look so smooth that either. So he might be a guy who might slip a little. But I think we had him. Do you think he's like back end first round McDonald originally, or did you see him as a second round guy?
Yeah, I haven't watched him yet, but I mean, watching Ohio State, the amount of times I've watched Ohio State, he flashes on film. I like what I've seen from him, the little bit I've watched of him. So I think he's going to be a guy that, like, despite what he tested or didn't do at the combine, as a football player, I still like his game.
Mhm.
He's going to be a back end day one, early day two guy, regardless. I don't think what he does or doesn't do at the combine, and I'm sure he'll do stuff at his pro day, which will help him. I don't think that'll impact him too much. Malachi Fields is the type of guy that, like, this will probably hurt him and what his draft stock is. He has good size for a wide receiver. He wasn't incredibly productive at Notre Dame, wasn't nearly as productive outside of the red zone as he was at Virginia. The 3 or 4 years he spent prior to being at Notre Dame. And, when you're a guy that runs that type of 40, that's going to stand out. And his film isn't outstanding. It's good. There are flashes there, but you need to have more than just flashes if you're going to run a time like that.
Agreed. So let's transition now. So we're going to more the veteran market here. So today was the deadline for franchise tag and transition tag. So before we get into who was actually tagged and who wasn't, so I just want to define for our audience the difference here. So, right, so you've got the franchise tag. So the franchise tag is basically a team can tag a specific player with this franchise tag. There's another team in which another team must give you potentially 2 first-round picks if it's a non-exclusive tag. So if you choose to not match another team's offer and you have a player that you assign the franchise tag to, the other team could have to give up 2 first-round picks for you. And usually the franchise tag, well, I shouldn't say usually, the franchise tag is more expensive than the transition tag. The franchise tag is top 5 salaries at the position. The transition tag is actually the average of the top 10 salaries at the position, and you are allowed to negotiate if you're a player that's been given the transition tag. but the team would get zero compensation if you choose not to match it. If a team chooses not to match an offer. So it's a little different in terms of how these tags are done. So let's hit on it real quick. So one of the big ones for the day, so George Pickens was given the franchise tag by the Dallas Cowboys, $27.3 million for one season. Sign me up for that, Tom. I wouldn't mind making that much money for 1 year of work. So thoughts on George Pickens and where he currently stands? If the Cowboys, you think they'll try to still work out a long-term deal, or are we still possibly talking trade here?
So again, it's important to note that he got the non-exclusive tag. So that means that teams are allowed to negotiate with George Pickens to try to sign him. If they were to sign him, that team would then, I'm almost positive, would then have to give the Dallas Cowboys 2 draft picks. Now,
right.
everybody assumes it's 2 firsts, but I have read that those picks can be negotiated.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know.
I still think there's a world, and I'm curious to bounce this off of you, Finn, where if you're a team like the Buffalo Bills or the Los Angeles Chargers, and you're picking in the 20s this year, why would you not entertain offering George Pickens $34 million over however many years, and then have a conversation with the Cowboys about, hey, we'll give you our first this year and a third this year, or our first this year and a second next year, or our second this year and our first next year. Do you think there's a downside to that if you're one of those teams?
So you are giving up a lot of picks, but yeah, on the back end. So, all right. So you're giving up. So let's see. So if I'm say I'm the Patriots, okay.
Yep.
So the Patriots,
another good team,
right? That, I got Drake May on a rookie contract still. I'm all in. I'm going all in. I need a number 1 receiver for this guy. I'll give up my pick 31 for George Pickens. I mean, I think that makes perfect. I think it would be 31 and maybe another player, maybe, right? Because then you also got to negotiate with him for
in these scenarios. Even if you're the Chargers or the Bills, who when we do our previews to start the year, or maybe not the Chargers, but the Bills will be my pick most likely to win the AFC East. Okay, we can talk about that when we get there. But if I'm the Bills, I'm giving up my first, even if it's both firsts. You're giving up a pick in the 20s this year and a pick that you're hoping is going to be in the 30s next year.
right.
I just think there's a world where a team might just say, let's make this move this year. I don't think there's a world where he stays in Dallas past this year or next year. It's just a lot to ask to have your football team paying your quarterback the amount of money they're paying him. You're already paying CeeDee Lamb $30-something million, and now you're going to pay another wide receiver $30 million. It just doesn't make sense. So I do think there's a scenario this offseason where if one of these teams, preferably from the AFC, goes, we're going to be picking in the 20 the next 2 years, screw it. Let's offer him $33 million. And yes, it is a lot, but we talk about this all the time. What wide receiver in this draft is better than George Pickens?
None.
What wide receiver in next year's draft is better than George Pickens?
Well,
we'll look at Jeremiah Smith. Maybe. But if you're the Bills, you're not going to be picking high enough to draft him anyway. Wide receiver 2 in next year's class probably isn't better. So again, it's easy for me when I'm sitting here in my chair and I have no stake in it to be like, yeah, I would make that move. I'm just curious if a team tests Dallas's resolve this offseason. Otherwise, he'll play on this tag this year. We'll see if he's happy about it or not. I don't think he'll show up to training camp. I think he'll hold out looking for a long-term deal, and I get why. And then he'll probably play on the tag, and then Dallas will look to either franchise him again next year or trade him at some point next year. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially, right? I mean, we talked about a team like the Chargers last week when we did our free agency preview. They have one of the highest, I think, salary cap situation, or not the highest open cap situation, money to spend in free agency this year. I mean, they need a number 1 receiver. I mean, you can make a case, Ladd McConkey maybe could be a number 1 receiver. I don't really see him that way. But yeah, they can make a move for a guy like George Pickens. Maybe they give up their first round. They got to be 21 or 22, something like that. They can give up that first round pick, sign him to a brand new contract, and he's their number 1 receiver. And yeah, if I'm looking at it from like a Chargers perspective, I don't think I'm going to be drafting in the top, 5 next year if I pick up George Pickens here. Why don't if I give up this year's pick and next year's pick for him? So yeah, I think that makes perfect sense for a team like that. And Buffalo will be a team. Yeah, we'll get to them on Friday when we complete our free agency previews. But yeah, on the back end, a team like that in the first round that really needs a number one receiver. I
It's
wouldn't fault anybody for
it
going all in.
it's just a thought, and
Mhm.
and maybe it doesn't happen. These teams go, our draft picks are way more valuable than a guy that has a checkered past. I get it. It's just a non-exclusive tag. It allows Dallas to kind of feel what the market is for Pickens if anybody wants to test it, and then get something in return if they choose not to match it.
Mhm. Let's get to another guy now who got the franchise tag today. So Kyle Pitts, the tight end for the Falcons, he's going to be playing on a $15 million a year franchise tag. I would think that Atlanta's going to want to try to look to get a deal done with him. You could make a case though that his career, to the extent that it's been, has been a little underwhelming considering what he was expected to be coming out of Florida. But, for a team going into this year, there's with some question mark around the quarterback position. Michael Penix, we don't really know what his status is going to be going into the season. I think Pitts is probably a guy I would think that they would want to keep around still as like at least maybe not the number one option behind Drake London, but at least the number two option in the passing game.
Yeah, this makes sense for all parties, right? Well, I mean, for all parties, meaning the Falcons. They need to see a little bit more from this guy. You had mentioned it when talking about Pitts. The franchise tag just makes sense. It's not a super high number. He's shown flashes, but you can't commit to him, and at the same time, you almost kind of want to see if there's a little bit more consistency in him. So, I'm sure it's frustrating for Pitts. Maybe he holds out as well, but if you're Pitts, you just got to put your head down and show the Falcons or anybody that you can be the number one tight end that everybody thought you could be. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it makes sense for the Falcons, and I think it kind of makes sense for Pitts as well.
Great. And yeah, I think this is actually going to be Kyle Pitt's third different coaching staff that's going to be worked with him,
That's
right? Arthur
crazy.
Smith was there, then Raheem Morris's staff, and now he's got Stefanski working with him, who might be the best of the three, I think, to potentially work with him and hopefully open up the, help develop him more with the player. Maybe he can live up to the player that he was expected to be drafted at when what the Falcons thought they were going to be getting with that high first round pick they used on him. Another guy who got the non-exclusive franchise tag today was Breece Hall on the Jets. So the Jets tag him, and so he'll if he does play on the tag this year, it's for 14.293 million. That's the exact number, according to Adam Schefter, what I'm reading right here. So the plan is that the Jets are hopeful that they can negotiate and bring him back for a 2 to 3 year contract, which that would be really good. I mean, again, I don't know if Breece Hall really wants to stay with the Jets, especially for a team that we're not sure about the quarterback situation and how the offense might be looking coming into this year. But he's the other guy that got the non-exclusive tag today.
Yeah, I mean, if let me ask you as a Jet fan, what are you hoping happens with him?
I would like to sign him to like some kind of maybe like a 3 year deal. If you can knock out even like he's only 25 years old. I wouldn't mind signing him to a 3 year deal. We lock him in until he's about like 28 years old. And then by then, he's ready to go what would be his third contract by then. Then he could maybe hit the market. But yeah, he's been a rock solid player for us, dude. He's been so underused the past couple of years. Some of the offenses that have been here, he's great coming out of the backfield. He finally had his first year as a 1,000 yard rusher. I will say about him, as good as he's been, tell you, man. So he tore his ACL his rookie year, and just when I watch him run, I'm just like, I don't know if the speed's like what he used to be. I really don't.
Yeah,
And this is
for
crazy. This is a guy
sure.
who's 25 years old, but but the state of the Jets right now, and I spoke about this when I talked about the Jets on our free agency preview. I can't create any more holes. Aaron Glenn and this staff
That's fair.
need to win games this season, and Breece Hall with him in the backfield is going to help you, win games. They have another decision they got to make. Their other big free agent hitting the market is Elijah Vera Tucker. Again, a guy who's been hurt a lot, but again, if the Jets are smart, they'll try to bring him back too. So the Jets cannot create any more holes than they already have because they're already one of the worst rosters in the league.
I guess the only concern I have is, unless Brees plays poorly this year, um, what signing him to the tag does is basically sets his value at
Mhm.
14 million. Would you be comfortable with that as a Jet?
Yeah, I would be.
Okay,
14
because
million. I'm cool with that.
you know, right now it's 14.2 on the tag. That would make him the fourth highest paid running back in football. I really
Mhm.
like Breece Hall, and you have to figure if he has another year, he's going to want to make more than that. I think
Mhm.
as long as Jet fans are comfortable with that, I really like Breece Hall, the player. I think this also kind of gives the Jets the flexibility to kind of feel out where they are. If by the middle of next year they're like, you know what, we've tried the Breece thing, we are no closer to winning in the next 2 to 3 years with him than we are without him. Let's look to flip him and see if we can get a
Mhm.
draft pick, and then they can set themselves up for a really, really strong draft next year.
Agreed, and especially because remember Brees coming into this year, there were reports that the Jets were getting some interest from him at the deadline,
Not
right this
shocked.
past year, 2025, and they could have unloaded him at the deadline. So it's like you had your chance to unload him at the deadline, and then you're just going to let him walk in free agency for absolutely nothing when they could have got like a fourth round pick, I think, from the Chiefs at the time. So it just makes perfect sense using Brees, the asset that he is to the team. It would have made no sense letting him walk for absolutely nothing. We're going to talk about here. So Daniel Jones, quarterback of the Colts. So he got the transitional tag by the Colts. This gives the Colts basically the right of first refusal if another team wants to negotiate with him and offer him a deal. This is the first time actually the transitional tag has been used on a QB since Jeff George in 1996 by the Falcons. So with the Colts using this transition tag, they did not use a tag on Alec Pierce, who will be a free agent. So, right, Tom, I think Daniel Jones, is this a spot if you're a team like the Vikings, if you're a team maybe like the Steelers, if you're a team like the Browns, you sniffing around here on Daniel Jones?
Yeah, the injury has to be the major factor here, right? He
Mhm.
he looked good for the Colts. Now, who knows how they would have finished if he doesn't get injured, but he played well for the Colts. He was happy with the Colts. The Colts seem happy with him. So I just wonder if maybe they're a little concerned with his recovery from this injury. What's it what is there a number on that tag? Is it just the franchise whatever the price is for a quarterback?
Let me take a look at that. So it should be the top 10 for quarterbacks.
Right?
That's what
Okay,
I'd
so
heard.
it'll probably be 40 something million, I think. I don't know. While you're looking that up, I'll say my piece. I I would be it'll be interesting because, yeah, the Vikings could be a spot. I just don't know how many teams are looking at this and going, do I want to pay $45 million for Daniel Jones off of one
Right.
season? Right? There's still the giants of it all lingering, and I was happy for Daniel Jones. He played really well. He's coming off of an injury, and we're talking about he's going to have to get paid more than whatever the tag is. So if that's 45, 46, 47 million, I just don't know how many teams are going to be willing to commit that to Daniel Jones. Maybe we talk about this with quarterbacks all the time, and I'm one that goes, that quarterback will get more on the open market if he walks,
Mhm.
right? Like there's always there was the talk with Dak when he was or wasn't going to hit the open market. What will Dallas do? And numbers were thrown around, and I always said someone will pay him whatever you think he can get. So maybe there is a team out there that goes, you know what? If we can get Daniel Jones level in Indianapolis, we can win. And then it would be very interesting, right? I don't know if the Colts would match it. I'd be curious to see what you get in return. I don't know if we know what that is. He's going to be a very interesting player when the free agent market hits. You have to figure he's the top quarterback on the market, technically, right?
Well, there might be another one now we'll get into, but yeah, I agree.
I think even with that player we're going to talk about, I think he'd be quarterback one, but then is he quarterback one with the price tag? That's the interesting thing, right?
Right.
Is he quarterback one if you have to pay him $47 million over 3 or 4 seasons?
Mhm.
That's a very, very interesting question. We're going to see what Daniel Jones's value really is.
So the transition tag is valued at 37.83 million for quarterback. So
Jeez.
that's more than $6 million cheaper than the QB franchise tag. So that's according to Adam Schefter, who tweeted that a few hours ago. So um,
I have to imagine he stays in Indianapolis,
I
right?
would think
I
so,
mean,
right
I
on
mean,
that
when we're
dollar
talking
amount.
about teams that need quarterbacks, the Vikings are one, but I don't think they can make that type of contract work. I mean, I don't think a team like the Jets would with the money. Oakland's gonna Oakland, Jesus, Vegas is gonna draft Mendoza. I mean, the Titans have
Titans aren't
money, but
gonna.
they have Cam Ward. And I'm just trying to think of teams
Pittsburgh. So
that,
Pittsburgh would be interesting to me.
I mean, when
If
I
they
look at
want to run it back with Rodgers or not, I don't know.
when I look at teams that need a quarterback, I mean, the Jets are there with 89, but I don't think the Jets would pay that for Daniel Jones. And then when you look at the teams, like, yeah, the Steelers would be an interesting shout.
Cleveland's not going to do it either with the money they got invested in Watson.
And Cleveland doesn't have a lot of money to work with. Like when you
Right.
look at the teams that are in the green, which is what I would consider teams with money, Tennessee, Vegas, they're not going to do it. The Jets, would they? Maybe. I don't think so. The Chargers won't. Washington won't. Seattle won't. Cincinnati won't. The Rams won't. New England won't. Pittsburgh has $40 million of cap space right now. They could make it work, right? Like they could make it and open up more space. But now we're talking about whatever you open up, the majority of that is going to go to your quarterback. I just don't know what the
Yeah.
market is for him. I have to imagine he stays in Indianapolis.
Let's touch on a couple of guys that will be heading to free agency that did not get tagged. So, right, we're sticking with the Colts here. Alec Pierce, they can still negotiate with him. There's still time. They can keep negotiating with him, and they will negotiate with him directly until Monday at 12 o'clock when free agents, or excuse me, when other teams are allowed to speak to individual players' agents. So they still have a short window here that they can get a deal done within 6 days or so. Another guy who didn't get the tag, Adafe Owe, who's the pass rusher from the Chargers. He'll be a free agent. So this is interesting. So Jacksonville, they did not tag Travis Etienne or Devin Lloyd. So they will both be free agents unless Jacksonville can negotiate long-term extensions with both of them before Monday at 12 o'clock. And then the other big name I have here, Tyler Linderbaum, who's expected to be the highest paid center in the league once free agency starts. Also, a couple of guys I forgot. Trey Hendrickson. So he was not tagged by the Bengals. He's entering his age 32 season, coming off an injury-riddled season. So is expected to be one of the top free agents available. And, of course, right, his market's probably going to be based off of his strong 2024 season when he finished second in Defensive Player of the Year votes. And then the other big name, Kenneth Walker, right? He wasn't tagged by the Seahawks, so he's expected to be a free agent. I don't think Seattle's going to be negotiating too hard over the next week for him. So, right, I mean, he ran for 1,027 yards and 5 touchdowns this season, but we saw how good he was in the playoffs when Zach Charbonnet got hurt and went down. So in the playoffs, right, he ran for over 300 yards in 3 games with 4 touchdowns for the Super Bowl champs, the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, when it comes to Walker, I touched on this when we talked about Seattle. I think it was last week. It might have been 2 weeks ago. Seattle just doesn't sign running backs to long-term deals. It's just not what they do. So I'm sure there will be conversations, and I'm sure if they can get Walker on a deal that suits all parties, then yeah, he'll be back. But I have to imagine Kenneth Walker's looking to get paid, and if he's looking to get paid, I don't think that'll be with Seattle. Hendrickson, we all saw that coming, right? He's on the wrong side of 30, has not been able to stay healthy, still has potential. Like he's a guy that I would like to see Dallas look at, although I think they're going to get priced out of his market. And if you're Cincinnati, I don't think you can pay him the type of money he's going to get on the open market to potentially not play, 16 games, 17 games in a season on top of all the other needs that this football team has. So I think we knew that one was going to end with both parties going their separate ways.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that was the tags. So let's talk about now some news and reports that have been going around. So I want to touch upon some actual news first before we get into some of the rampant rumors that were circulating around during the Combine week. So let's touch on the actual news first. So it just happened about an hour ago. The Cardinals are going to release quarterback Kyler Murray. So, right, no team seems to have wanted anything to do with that contract. So the Cardinals will now have to eat $54 million in dead cap space, assuming Murray is not designated as a post-June 1st release. So all of a sudden, we were just talking about Daniel Jones, but maybe Kyler Murray becomes the most competent veteran QB on the market. It's important to note here, actually, he can play with salary offsets this year. It's kind of similar to when Russell Wilson was released by the Broncos a few seasons ago. So he might be available to teams for league minimum money since he's still getting paid by Arizona. So this actually could be a pretty good chance for him to really pick and choose who he wants to play for. So he's leaving Arizona. He had a career record of 38, 48, and 1. And again, I mean, we mentioned, in the past, it's been documented. There's a lot of red flags surrounding Murray, regarding, right, work ethics, his leadership. And of course his health since returning from tearing his ACL in 2022, he really hasn't looked the same player as he did his first few years in the league when he did win the rookie of the year. So what do you think about Kyler Murray, Tom? I mean, I tell you, as a Jets fan, now that I see like, hey, this is minimum money here. Now, again, I don't know why he'd want to play for the Jets when he has this choice of where to go, but this is definitely, you definitely need to, uh, this is a guy you definitely need to take a look at if you're the Jets, the Vikings, the Browns, whoever. And I think you're going to look this way before you look at a guy like Daniel Jones for the amount of just the big money difference between the two that you could be paying him.
We don't know if it's a post June 1st.
We don't know yet. We don't know yet.
I have to imagine it's going to be a post
That's what I
June
would think.
1st. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is a football team right now that, I mean, they are a decent ways under the cap, and we haven't talked about them yet. And they do have ways to create more money, and they wouldn't incur a massive hit this year. It's next year that or no, they actually would take a decent hit this year. I don't know. I have to imagine it's going to be a post June 1st. I'm not a big Kyler Murray guy. Like I'll just say it straight up. I thought this team was better with Jacoby Brissett. I understand that a team will take a risk on him. I think it's fair to take a risk on him. He's just not my style of quarterback. I think he tries to make too many plays with his legs, and he's a part of this new age of quarterback where he looks to extend the play and run around a lot and wait for guys to get open. And I think it works to an extent, but he kind of lives and dies by it. And I know the debate will probably be between him, Tua, who we'll talk about in a second, and Daniel Jones and Malik Willis. If on a team like the Jets, sure, like I think it would make sense to take a shot on a guy like him. If I were the Vikings and I thought I could win this year, I don't think I would take a chance on a guy like this. I think there are other options I'd feel more comfortable with. But yeah, I mean, I hope it works out for the guy. He's 29 years old. So, you that kind of gets lost on it. I think he'll be 29 by the start of the league year. And, it hasn't really worked out. And I would just say, and I'm sure this is much, it has to do with Kyler as it does Arizona, but the fact that Arizona is willing to move on from him now and that there was no trade market for him. And I'm sure the contract plays a factor into it. But again, we'll talk about this with Tua too. The fact that there's no trade market for these guys, I kind of think speaks to what people think about them around the league. Now,
Yeah.
if they're on a cheap contract, as you mentioned, a league minimum or something along those lines, yeah, he'll become appealing to teams. But he'll get a change of scenery, and I hope it works out for him, similar to it does Daniel Jones. But I'm curious to see what his market looks like. Come March 15th or 13th, whenever the league year starts.
Yeah. So this is pretty funny. I have to bring this up. So I just searched Kyler Murray in X just to see if I can get some news on him. So a tweet pops up, a tweet from you actually. So I'm going to have to look up the game, I think, for this. I don't know who they played. September 14th, 2025. You want to hear what you said?
What'd I say?
You said, win or lose, this is why I could never buy into Kyler Murray. That interception was just so stupid. Zero reason to throw that ball. Changed the entire game. I have to actually look up the game, and I think I might have to look up the actual interception he threw.
Oh my goodness.
That's
There
too
you go.
funny.
There's my opinion. And I'm not trying to be a jerk to the guy. It's just like at some point, quarterback play needs to be what Sam Darnold did this year, right? Like at some point, you just got to stand in the pocket, go through your reads, and deliver the football. And there are too many times, and maybe he's learned since when was that tweet?
That was
this year?
September 14th of 25.
Okay, so
That's like week 2 or something.
a year ago. Maybe he's learned from there, and I hope he's had. But at some point, I just want my quarterback to just make the smart play. And we're going to talk about this when we break football down this year. There are so many times, especially when you watch college football, that you just want a quarterback to just eat a ball. Just take a sack. It's okay to take a sack. You don't need to get the ball out of your hands. And Kyler Murray's one of those guys where he may not force a ball, but he's going to run around a lot and sometimes that has as big of a negative impact as trying to force a ball.
Yeah, running around a lot trying to make a play. That's the Zach Wilson specialty.
Drives me crazy.
So let's move on from Kyler. Another quarterback, let's talk. Tua Tagovailoa. So the reports over the past couple of days that the Dolphins are expected to release Tua, and it's making it sound like it would definitely be a post-June 1st cut in order to spread the $99 million in dead money between the 2026 and the 2027 seasons. They're obviously looking into trading him, but it seems like nobody's going to be picking up that contract. And I went into further detail on that last week during our free agency preview when I was talking about the Dolphins. Just really tough right now. Again, though, I can't see any team trading for this guy. And I also can't see him playing for this team though from all the news that's been coming out over the past couple months. So it'll be will be interesting to see if maybe Dolphins do the same thing that Arizona just did for Kyler. Maybe they'll cut Tua in the next day or so and say, hey, we're just going to split the cap hit up between these 2 years. We're rebuilding anyway. I just saw today they cut a couple other guys. Liam Eichenberg, one of their offensive linemen, just got
Yep.
released too. So they might this might go the same route. Maybe they could just cut Tua. They say, you know what, let's just wash our hands of this situation and, we'll let him test the market and he'll be the same thing as Kyler Murray. He can basically pick and choose his next place where he wants to play.
I just don't think there's a world they cannot post June 1st this guy. Like
Mhm.
the numbers, like if you're not post June 1st designating this guy, then you are basically punting the next 2 seasons. You're basically saying we're just going to draft whatever we can and go from there cuz like the cap hit would be crazy. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with Tua. The big problem with Tua is you have the injury stuff too. Like the concussions are a very serious thing, and you don't want to wish it upon anybody. I really like the kid coming out of Alabama,
Mhm.
and the concussions have really had just a negative impact on him. His play has definitely decreased, and I talked about last Friday. Like if you were a team that believed in him, why not just trade him and take on a little bit of the salary, and then you could always get out of the contract next year, and it wouldn't be too bad.
Mhm.
Like Kyler, there's no trade market for this guy on that contract, and he'll get an opportunity. I don't know if this is a guy like Kyler Murray though that will walk into a situation and be a starter next year. Maybe
Mhm.
he's competing for a starting spot. Maybe he's going to a spot where there's somebody else there and he's got to try to beat him out. But between the concussions and the way he played this year, I just think it's going to be really tough for him to walk into a team day one and be a starter.
Yeah, speaking of Tua coming out of Alabama, I remember being at your house for the national title game when he when he came in and won the game. They benched Jalen Hurts. They brought in Tua and they Bama won the national title. I remember that game. But yeah, agreed. I don't know. I really don't know where I could see him starting next year. I mean, it actually maybe he could have a similar career trajectory as like a Daniel Jones. Right? Daniel Jones coming into last year's free agency. We didn't think he was going to start in Indianapolis. But he got the opportunity, beat Anthony Richardson out, and then goes on to at least have a great 8-9 games before he got hurt. So maybe Tua can have a similar trajectory as Daniel Jones. We'll have to see how it plays out.
And that's the thing working for Tua and Kyler Murray, right?
Mhm.
There may be a GM 2, 3, 4 that are like, you know what? Look at Daniel Jones in a change of scenery. Look at Daniel Jones in a different offense. There very well could be 2 or 3 guys out there that are saying, you know what? Let's take these guys. We've seen them start in the NFL, and they've shown us enough on film that we feel comfortable. It'll be very interesting. I think it's more likely for Kyler than it is Tua, but who knows? Quarterback play is so important, and some GMs are so desperate that they might look at those 2 guys and go, all right, I'm willing to give one a chance if I have a year or 2 left before I get fired.
Mhm. Right. Okay, so that's Tua and the Dolphins. Let's touch on a couple Vikings players here. So, two specifically, we got running back Aaron Jones and defensive tackle Javon Hargrave. So, it's being reported that the Vikings will release Jones and or Hargrave if they cannot trade them before the league year ends. So, speaking for Jones, so he's entering his age 32 season. He's been banged up the past few years. He's got a pretty big cap hit, so will likely be cut. And I'm thinking at this point of his career, I think really the best spot for him, Tom, is he might just end up as like the head of some back by committee. And basically the same for Javon Hargrave, right? I mean, he's a guy, he's 33 years old, and I'd be surprised if the Vikings got anything back for him more than like maybe a late round pick. But I'll let you talk Vikings a little bit since you did talk about him last week on our free agency, or 2 weeks ago on our free agency preview.
Yeah, when you look at Aaron Jones, 31 now, on that contract. Yeah, I think both those guys were guys that I had mentioned they'd look to trade. I think Hargraves could still have value because defensive tackle is still a position that you want to have solid contributors, and Hargraves can still at a minimum be that. I think your late round pick thing is very spot on. I could see him going for like a 5th or 6th round pick.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is an interesting one. He was banged up a lot this year, and he just wasn't. I mean, he was on a similar trajectory as he was a year prior, where he rushed for 1,000 yards. He was still around 4 yards a carry, but he was injured last year, and that's always a concern. Is what is a running back on the wrong side of 30 going to look like if he can't play full seasons? I have to imagine he'll end up somewhere. There's still value in what he can probably bring, but yeah, he'll. I think his days as being another number one running back are over, and he might be fine with that, going to a place where he can be kind of a situational down running back and catch the ball a little bit more out of the backfield and provide different ways to help the team. He may be okay with that in that part of his career. But yeah, I think both these guys will move on from the Vikings.
Speaking of running backs, we had another trade that was made recently. So David Montgomery on the Lions. So he was traded to the Texans. Lions got a pretty decent sized package
Yeah,
back for this.
I thought it was a decent return.
Yeah, Juice Scruggs, who's an offensive lineman. They got a 2026 fourth round pick and a 2027 seventh round pick. So yeah, nice return for a 29-year-old running back. And I think Montgomery going to Houston, right? I would think this is a guy who's probably going to split carries with Woody Marks. Maybe Marks takes over mainly like he'll handle the passing down. So I think this likely means Joe Mixon's time in Houston is over as he'll hit the free agent market as well. But yeah, I mean, Montgomery, I think this is a pretty good spot playing with CJ Stroud and the Houston offense.
I thought it was a really good return, considering this is a guy that like they kind of had to move because their cap situation. They're another team that their cap situation. I'm going to try to bring it up here. Is like not is pretty
It was
dire.
tight. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're still, I don't know if this is updated after the trade, but they're still over the cap at this point. So to get that back in return is great. And this is a team that usually drafts and signs guys to 1 to 2 year deals. Well, the Lions. And for Houston, it kind of feels like a low risk, right? Like, yeah, you give up a 4th round pick for him, but as you said, him and Woody Marks can provide something different. Montgomery's great in the red zone. He still took a good amount of carries last year for the Lions. So it kind of feels like a low risk move for them, and they can move on from Joe Mixon and kind of start a new era for their backfield.
Mm-hmm. Another move here, Marshawn Lattimore, the cornerback for the Commanders. He was released on Monday. He was due for $18.5 million this year, but he really never lived up to expectations for when the Commanders acquired him from the Saints at the 2024 deadline. Plus last year in week 9, he tore his ACL, so really unsure of his status to start the season. So, I think so I did check it out actually after they released him. The Commanders right now, one of the leaders in cap space available heading into free agency, and we know that they desperately need to fix that defense. I think Trey Hendrickson, this might be the spot for him potentially.
Yeah, unfortunately,
I think so. So yeah, Marshawn Lattimore cut. Anything you want to talk about there, Tom, with Marshawn?
Yeah, I think this is a guy who, despite the injury, like we'll see how he looks. He'll probably be a guy that isn't picked up until into the season, or maybe a team picks him up and lets them. Yeah, maybe they let him rehab there. I still think this is a guy that teams will take a chance on. He was bad last year. He was not, like, there's no way around it. His play fell off a cliff to an extent, but the year prior, he was pretty good. So I have to think, if you are a team, especially a contender, that is looking to add a guy that you're probably going to be able to add on a number 2 corner, right? He was due to make $18.5 million. I don't think he'll get anywhere near that this year. Maybe you get him in a low double figures, and 11, 12, $13 million on a 1-2 year deal. If you can get him on that type of deal, I think it's worth the risk, because there probably still is a decent football player there. He's still only 29 years old, so I wouldn't be shocked if there is a market for him. It's just going to come after teams know what happens with that knee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'll touch upon it real quick, Tom. It's not in the notes, but there was another trade I forgot to include here. So Titus Howard actually was traded by Houston to the Browns, the right tackle.
Interesting. I didn't see this one.
So I forgot to include it originally. But anyway, so Titus Howard gets traded. So the Browns officially have, I think, 1 offensive lineman under contract now going into next season, currently at this time. So I did find it interesting, actually, when he was traded, because I feel like it happened. I actually remember this. I was watching the offensive line drills, and they compared Titus Howard. When I say they, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah. He had compared Titus Howard to basically the right tackle from Arizona State, whose name escapes me. So I just found it interesting that he happened to compare that player, and then that player gets moved like a day later, maybe I don't know. Maybe that guy stood out. Maybe just by DJ saying something. Maybe that alerted the Texans, or maybe they liked what they saw too on the in the combine from him. But the name escapes me. I don't know, the Arizona State right tackle. But while you're researching, another thing going on with the offensive line. So Drew Dahlman, who's the starting center from the Bears, he actually retired today after 5 seasons. So he had just signed with the Bears last offseason on a 3-year, $42 million contract. He's coming off a Pro Bowl season. So he finished with a 72.6 PFF grade. So this is really a legitimate surprise. I wonder if the Bears had a feeling like this could have been coming. I would think they probably would have over the past few weeks. I don't think they would have been as surprised as a lot of us were to find out that the starting center, a Pro Bowl player, just retired from them. And all of a sudden, the interior offensive line for the Bears. Now, we haven't gotten to the Bears yet in our free agency preview, but I would think the interior offensive line, all of a sudden, this is going to become a big need for them as they try to protect Caleb Williams going into next season. Some big decisions need to be made with Chicago. I think I actually just saw too, Tom, that Chicago's bringing in Tyler Biotish for a visit too for center. So
That would make sense. The former Cowboy and now former Commander was released last week or 2 weeks ago.
mhm.
His play was okay last year. It wasn't great. That would make sense on a fit. He won't cost Chicago too much money, and they're another team that's kind of up against it with the cap. So I can't look at them as and again they can free money up, but I can't imagine that they're going to go out and spend a ton of money. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how they shore up this interior line.
Actually, here's another news I just saw too. So this was actually from what's today? Today's the third. Yesterday the second. So the Lions actually trying to clear some more cap space. They released offensive lineman Graham Glasgow, which is going to save them about $5.5 million
Interesting.
against the cap. So for a team that really could use some offensive line help, they're choosing to do away with one of their veterans to I guess attack the free agent market, and they'll probably be a team also looking at offensive line help early in the draft.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I'm just going back through my notes here because we had talked about them last week. What
Mhm.
if his name was where was he? Was he on here? Oh, so yeah, I talked about Glasgow potentially moving back to guard where he played better, but I think it's clear the Lions felt center or guard he wasn't reliable, and again, they're a team up against the cap, so that one makes sense. Glasgow could be an interesting guard, a guard target for teams that need interior lineup. Again, he won't cost you too much money. 2 seasons ago, he was pretty solid at guard, struggled at center last year. If you can get him on a cheap deal, and you hope he can find that ability that he showed in 2024, you could get a very serviceable guard. But
Mhm.
yeah, the Lions are now another team that they're probably going to need a center and a guard in free agency or the draft now.
Mhm. Yeah, they really need to rebuild that line after struggling this past season. All right. So that's the actual news. Now let's get into some rumors, all right? So let's play a little game, Tom, all right? So, are you
Love it.
buying or selling what I'm going to give you here, okay? So, first player, JJ McCarthy. So, there are reports that the Vikings are exploring an exit strategy for McCarthy. Are you buying or selling the Vikings moving on from JJ McCarthy?
I buy that they're exploring it. I don't know if they're going to actually go through with it.
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of it makes sense, right? He's unless and it sure feels like the previous general manager wanted JJ McCarthy and wanted to play JJ McCarthy, and Kevin O'Connell, who it appears has some more of the power, which I'm happy about because I think he's an unbelievable head coach.
Yeah.
Has is having a little bit more say. So I believe that the Vikings look at McCarthy and go, I don't necessarily believe that he's going to be our future quarterback, but he's still on a rookie deal. He doesn't cost that much. I just don't know what the market is for him. So I think if a deal that was appealing to them came in front of them, they do the deal. I just don't think that deal is going to pop up. I think they're a team that's going to explore another name you have on this list, or Kyler Murray or Anthony Richardson, and pair him with JJ McCarthy. So I buy that they're exploring it, but I don't know what the market is and if they'll be able to pull it off.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the market is either, and I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in like a veteran guy, right? Whether maybe it's Kyler Murray or somebody else to at least maybe start for the Vikings while JJ stays as the backup. Maybe they're still hoping that maybe they can develop him maybe over another year. Maybe he needs another year on the bench before maybe having the opportunity to take over if that
Yeah.
veteran quarterback doesn't have as
There
great of
was
a
that
run.
clip of Kevin O'Connell hugging Anthony Richardson. I don't know if it
I've
was
seen
after
that. Yeah, I
was
saw
that
that.
this year's game or last year's game?
That's a good question. I don't know if they played them last year or not. If the Colts played the Vikings last year.
Whatever it was very telling that Kevin O'Connell is a very big fan of Anthony Richardson. And if I was Anthony Richardson, I'd want to play for this guy. So just keep an eye on that.
Second name I'm going to throw at you. So Matt Barrows from The Athletic is reporting, I'm going to put this in quotes because this is how I read it. The stars could be aligning for the 49ers to trade Mac Jones. Are you buying or selling that Mac Jones will be traded?
Again, I'm buying that if the opportunity comes that the San Francisco 49ers will do it. And I think there's an opportunity where you could have a team that likes what they saw from Mac Jones. He's come from this Shanahan, McVay type quarterback tree where these guys all seem to get better after spending time with them. And a team could be looking to deal a back half of day 2 pick to get him. And I think if the Niners got that, they would deal him. I don't think they'll give him away for something cheap. Maybe an early day 3 pick or a back half day 2 pick. I think they'd deal Mac Jones.
Would you give up a second round pick for Mac Jones?
I would not. What team am I?
The Jets.
No, I would not. I would
I
not
wouldn't
give up.
either.
I would not either. The Vikings are an interesting team because that second round pick would be towards the back end
Or
of
yeah,
the second round.
they went 9 and 8. I think it's like pick 18 or something like that.
I'm just gonna look up.
So a second round pick would be like
I'm gonna
in
make
what, the
sure
late
they
40s.
have their. I'm gonna make sure they have their second round pick. Um, this is great podcasting here. Do they have their second round pick?
Yeah, I can't tell you that either.
They
But yeah,
do. They
they
do.
do.
So if I were the Vikings, maybe would I consider it if I feel that strongly about Mac Jones? Yeah. If I'm a team like the Jets or maybe
Jets,
the
we have too high.
Falcons or the Browns or the Dolphins, no, I'm not any closer to winning.
How about this? I'm going to put you on the spot here because I just thought of another one. So how about this? Would you rather trade a second round pick for Mac Jones, or from reports that I'm seeing today, a third round pick for Tanner McKee with the Eagles?
I'd rather trade for Mac Jones.
Right, a proven commodity,
I've
basically.
seen him play more in the NFL, and I thought he played well for San Fran last year.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner McKee, I know people are very high on him. I haven't seen enough that I'd want to give up a third. If we're talking a fourth, I would probably be okay with that. But
Mm-hmm.
in an ideal world, I'd rather give up none of that for anybody. I'd rather give up a third or go one round later. I'd rather give up a third round pick for Mac Jones and a fourth round pick for Tanner McKee.
Right.
But if I had to pick between those two, I'd give up the second for Mac Jones.
All right. Good to know. All right, man. Next player I'm going to throw at you. Well, it is a quarterback. Derek Carr. So, right, Saints are claiming that they have not heard from any team that wants to trade for Derek Carr, who's still technically under contract with them. So, right, so a team acquiring him would need to give up compensation. Do you buy or sell that Derek Carr plays football next season?
He only plays football if it's on the New Orleans Saints. I don't think anybody's trading for this guy. It's just been all downhill since he went to New Orleans. I'm pretty sure the contract is still awful. I'm sure as you give your thoughts, I'll be able to look it up here. But I can't see a team that is willing to take a chance on Derek Carr while he's on the contract that he's on. If they can get out of it, then yeah, maybe. But I don't think he plays next year.
Yeah, I think just on that contract. So, the Saints, right? So they still have contractual rights to him. I don't know if the Vikings could even be a team that could make that work. I mean, technically, a team like the Jets could make it work. You know, they have the cap space.
Has he retired?
I think he has technically officially retired. He just, there's reports, right? He was on the podcast with his brother.
He did retire, and yeah, okay, I did read this that he's considering coming back in 26. Yeah, I can't imagine a team is going to trade for him while he's on that contract. It's like $40 million a year, right?
Yeah, I think it's let's see. So if the Saints, so here's a report that I saw from March 1st. So while the Saints currently sit at about 44 million over the cap for 2026, one official league cap adjustments are finalized. New Orleans should gain about 28 million back from an adjustment to Derek Carr's contract. that was made prior to his retirement. So this is all from what I just read from Sport Track on Twitter. This is
Yeah,
from the other day.
I'm gonna sell he plays football this year. I think if he unretires, he sits on the Saints and he doesn't get on the football field. I don't think there's a world where a team trades for him.
I don't think so either. Yeah, I can't find the actual number here, but yeah. Um, okay, so let's move on. We got a couple more players we'll hit up here. So another name, AJ Brown, speaking of the Eagles a little earlier. So Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald is reporting the Patriots have explored a trade for AJ Brown, but the Patriots feel the Eagles' asking price is unserious. Buy or sell, AJ Brown will be traded.
I think he'll be traded. And I think it'll be post June 1st.
Mhm.
I still think contractually, and we'll talk about it when we get to the Eagles on Friday. I still think it's a really difficult contract to move for the Eagles before June 1st. I think post June 1st, there's some wiggle room and you can make things work. I also think an asking price will come down. I think a team like the Pats might be willing to deal something next year, not having to worry about it. You do all the prep work and you have a good feel for guys. And I have to imagine whatever the Eagles are asking for, whatever they feel they can get at that portion of the draft, they feel good about. So I'm buying he's going to be traded. I just think it's going to be post June 1st.
And I think this comes back around to our conversation from George Pickens earlier, right? If there's a team picking in the later half of the first round, if the Eagles trying to get a first round pick for him, a team like the Patriots, I think makes a lot of sense. Maybe a team like the Chargers could end up making sense here. Maybe even a team like the Raiders could make some sense. They have the cap room. They can make it work.
Here's one or the other for you, George Pickens or A.J. Brown. Now, if you sign George Pickens, you can get him to whatever contract you want because you're going to sign him. But let's just say you have to give Dallas a first and a third. Or A.J. Brown, where you have to take him on his existing deal, and maybe it's something like a second and a fourth. What would you prefer?
I would do the A.J. Brown deal. I'd do the second and the fourth.
Okay, that's fair.
Because, I mean, it's a thing too, right? I mean, again, I think, I don't know, I feel like taking A.J. Brown on for his current contract, right? If I have to renegotiate with George Pickens, I'm already paying Garrett Wilson a lot of money. I think I'd probably take on that Brown contract because I do think AJ Brown is like a top 5 receiver in the league.
What if you're the Pats?
If you're the Pats, I think I'd rather go for Pickens. That's what I think I would do if I were them. I think that for the Jets, it might make more sense.
It's interesting. I'm curious what the Eagles are asking for because if the Eagles are only asking, let's say the Eagles are saying, I want a first for AJ Brown. Then I could see a world where if that price comes down, A.J. Brown is way more appealing than giving up 2 picks and having to pay Pickens.
Right.
But I'd be very curious to hear what the Eagles are asking for.
I'm sure there'll be more reports as we get closer to free agency. I'm sure a lot more A.J. Brown news will be coming out. Last player I'm going to hit you with. We spoke about him a lot last week. Max Crosby on the Raiders. So a lot of folks believe a Crosby trade could happen possibly as early as this week. Are you buying or selling Max Crosby will be traded?
I'm selling because I just don't think unless the Raiders have significantly come down on their asking price, I don't think it makes sense for anybody to make a deal at this portion of the season. So if he's going to be sold, if he's going to be traded, I think it'll happen closer to the draft. So right now I'm selling. He's getting traded this week or next week. I think this thing drags out until the draft, and then we'll see if the Raiders' value of it changes then.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, coming back to the Raiders is a similar situation like we spoke of with the Jets earlier with Breece Hall. Just why create another hole where your roster is as bare bones as it is? You need talent on the defense, especially because their defense is just, it's not good. They need to add as much talent as possible, and they have a ton of cap space to make it happen. All right. Well, folks, thanks for hanging in the Loft with us today. So the official Loft Sports podcast can be found wherever you consume your podcasts. Check out our website at loftsportus.com. We continue to add scouting reports for the draft. As I said, Tom's continuing to turn them out. So I've been adding a new baseball preview every day too. Please check out our articles. Rate and review our articles. Please let us know how we're doing, right? So feedback is very important to us. So we know whether we're doing something right or maybe we're doing something wrong. Maybe we could do something better. So tell us what you think. Follow us on X, YouTube, TikTok. Guess what, Tom? We have a Facebook page and an Instagram now.
Love it.
So we're on 5 social platforms. Follow us at Loft Sports USA. Look at this. I even got a Loft Sports hat right here. We're probably going to do, thinking about doing some kind of raffle maybe in the near future where we give away a hat or something like that. So Check us out, Loft Sport USA, on all 5 social media platforms. Please rate and review our podcast on whichever platform you listen to your podcast. Give us that 5-star review. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you real soon. We'll be back on Friday as we finish up our free agency preview for 12 teams. Have a good night.